But before we get to the spotlight stuff and we get to these questions, I did want to touch upon something that's been very much talked about since last night, especially Magnum. I want to get your perspective on this. Tony Khan making the decision to air the CM Punk footage from All In and the confrontation that he had with Jungle Boy backstage. Wasn't much of a confrontation, I would say. And I don't think the return on investment is very positive for Tony Khan or AEW. I've expressed my thoughts on other podcasts about it, but I wanted to get your perspective. What did you think of that decision and what it means for AEW?
I'm sad for them because I was there at Sting's, final match and, that great pay-per-view they had and I've seen a lot of hope and bright spots and spectacular potential things they have within their programming. And so, television is your tool and your way of communicating, but it's not social media. It's not like putting a tweet out. It's not like throwing something on Instagram when you get a knee-jerk reaction to something. Taking the time and formatting and programming and have your talent, talk about something that happened months and months and months and months ago because you've got a thorn in your thigh from what has been done to you that you feel very passionate about is just not the way this business has always been. I mean, if you got a problem with someone, there's different ways to handle it. Just like the backstage incident that they made such a big deal about, that wouldn't even have got a sneeze as calling that a confrontation.
Yeah.
If that locker, and I don't believe the locker room was as all tore up about it as they said and all that stuff, because I think better of that than them. I mean, there's some men that work there and not a bunch of little wimps. And, and that was the farthest thing. A shove? Are you kidding me? He didn't get yanked down the hall and have his head shoved in the toilet and made a swirly out of, like Sting did, and there's things that have transpired in this business that if they were ever on film and camera would be more entertaining than some of the wrestling programs. But that wasn't one of them, and it was just to me a sad way to use your power of and I really don't like the fact that there's some great workers there. I have friends that work there and some amazingly talented young men and women that work there. And I want them to have a good platform. I want them to be successful. And I don't want it to come across like, this is a toy that you can use to throw a rock back across the pond because you're upset about something.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I just could not believe it. I was very bummed to see it. And I was seeing some of the feedback on social media, seeing even now poor Tony Schiavone, who's been there with the company since the beginning and stuff like that, and how he all the stuff. You look at something, and I was at WrestleCon over the weekend too, and who did I see but a star like Wardlow, who's had so many good moments for AEW and should have been pushed to the moon and then has been stopped, pulled, and everything like that. We haven't seen him for weeks on television yet again. Here he is at WrestleCon, and you can tell he's a star. And it's just why not put your focus on guys like that, gals other talents that you have on there. Make your focus that, not make something a little petty that this is what you said, throwing a rock across the river against just to make a point. And that's really what it felt like.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's about a business, and your business is only going to be ultimately as successful as its leadership. That's why we're seeing the WWE flourish right now, in a way we haven't seen in a long time because the hands have been untied and people are getting creative input that never had it before, and it's just a plus. And that same wealth of knowledge is sitting in that other organization, not being asked, not being, sat and kibitzed and, hey, what do you think of this? Or just, let them bounce something off of them. It's all just being done in a tunnel. And so if you truly want to win, you get a team around you of people that help you win. And that's not just the guys playing in the field. That's the guys sitting in the back that aren't yes men that that help you figure out how to feature these multi-million-dollar talents and things that you're able to acquire because of your wealth. And you know, uh, let's make some new stars and make some exciting people to come out of there because frankly, the biggest thing that's going on there are people that have come from the WWE into their organization, and there's some great talent there from Japan, but people in the States don't know them, so they haven't got a chance to get emotionally invested in them and get a history and give them a chance to be elevated, and that takes some very well thought out programming and television and forethought of where you're going and I don't expect any one person to be able to do that week in week out by themselves. It takes a group of people.
Can't do it.
Yeah, can't do it like that.
No, especially if you don't understand the sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as they think they do, and that was frustrating when people come from the outside and are trying to tell the people that have the knowledge to what should be done, and they don't want to listen to it, and things end up backfiring, and pretty soon you close the doors.
And you think about it too, like look at history repeating itself so soon. You think about over the course of time, and history tends to repeat itself. Everybody says learn from history, and that I'm not just talking about wrestling. I'm just saying in general too.
In general, yeah.
In general, but you look at the small microcosm of pro wrestling. Here, it's only like 20-something years since WCW went under, and Tony Khan's not seeing through the woods that this is you're making the mistakes that WCW ended up learning through and ultimately failing from. And it's like, wouldn't you keep that in perspective and things like that?
Look, compare to TNA back in the day.
Yeah.
All right. TNA had a viable, successful, entertaining, whether they were drawing money in arenas or whether the business model was working or not. The television was entertaining to watch.
Yes.
And they had a plethora of talent and it was entertaining. So if somebody was giving an alternative product with some really good talent and it's something that was entertaining to watch. And they didn't, granted the Carters had, dumped a whole lot of money into that one too, but at least the product that you were seeing on television was worth watching.
Mm-hmm.
Right. 100%. And Greg, like, when stuff would happen like with AWA or like there'd be competition and stuff like that, well, and like maybe Vern felt slighted at something or somebody or anything like that, like what was his kind of mindset? I couldn't imagine Vern getting like kind of petty like that and being like, I'm gonna put this on our television product. Or
he'd never do anything like that.
Yeah.
No. If anybody had an issue, he'd usually sit down and talk it out between the people and not and we had a group that did the booking, and we'd bounce things off each other, and then he'd have the final say on it, of course. But everybody sees wrestling and they think they understand it and they know how it works. You don't. You really don't until you're really thrown into it, and figure out what is best for not the individual, but for the all around, for everybody that's concerned. And you can see that now with the WWE more so than you did before. Triple H has such a great feel and a good mind for it. And you'll see, I think, a little change in what goes on now and how it goes on, how it's presented, and getting more back to almost reality of a match, you know? And if you don't listen to the people around you, I mean, you can't, you take wrestlers, you take their ideas, but you can't let them dictate what's going to happen. And you have to have that person in charge that can take that idea and mold it into a big bowl and put it together so it makes sense.
Right.
If that makes any sense at all.
That makes plenty of sense. It does. It really does.
Yeah. And that's where Vern was exceptional at that. we would come up with ideas, and then he would, he'd finish it off. Sometimes ours were good enough that he would go with it. But we had